Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we got a couple Jedi related questions, starting with this one from Sebastian Ramos, who asked, "Hey Thor, if the Jedi should be wandering and helping people around the galaxy, why do you think they don't free the slaves? For example, Qui-Gon Jinn had the power to do it, or at least to free Anakin's mom. I don't understand that part of the lore." Okay, so to be completely honest with you up front, why the Jedi on a large scale don't free the slaves in the prequels or in the time of the Phantom Menace is a hard question to answer, because I don't know that there is a good answer, or even should be, or that I should even attempt to give it a good answer. I think pretty obviously slavery is one of those things that should never ever be tolerated for any reason. If it is known to exist somewhere, good people, especially Jedi, should do all they can to end it. Now you could try and argue politics is what stops the Jedi from, again on the whole, acting to try and stop it. That in order to do it, they'd have to basically go to war with the Hutts and any others who sell or keep slaves, anyone involved in the trade. And it's a battle that perhaps they cannot so easily win, or simply don't have the resources to even really fight in the first place. Keep in mind that the Republic has no sort of standing military at this time, and that, no, the Jedi cannot fight wars, and we'll have a question more about that in a bit. There's also the fact that, as far as we know, most slaves have a little bomb in them that'll go off if they try to escape or if they are rescued. So if the Jedi launch some sort of effort to rescue slaves, if they come for them en masse, perhaps those bombs will be set off en masse rather than their owners seeing them all go free. Though something tells me if they did that, if they blew up a bunch of slaves that the Jedi were trying to rescue, the Jedi wouldn't just shrug it off and say, "Oh well, we tried." They'd probably come for those who had set off the bombs. And no, I'm not exactly saying these are great answers, like this makes sense or excuses the Jedi for seemingly allowing slavery in the galaxy without doing a whole lot about it. Like I was kind of saying before, slavery is something the Jedi, given the foundation of their beliefs, is literally compassion, or essentially loving everybody and believing people should be free to pursue the life they want. Well, you'd really think that slavery would be something they would kind of crusade against or do all they could to eradicate no matter what. That a potential large-scale confrontation with the Hutts wouldn't stop them, and that they'd invent a device that could find and deactivate the bombs inside of people, like Anakin was even trying to do. He was working on a scanner to find his own. Now, all that said, I think in the context of the Phantom Menace, I think the reason why George Lucas showed that there was slavery in the galaxy wasn't necessarily to try to make the Jedi look bad that they were apparently doing nothing about it, though you could certainly still argue it does make them look terrible no matter what the intent, or that, on the flip side, for all we know they are trying to do something about it, and it is not that easy to just end slavery. I mean, we still have it here in the real world. Anyway, it was instead done to make a point about Anakin, or where he came from, how his story begins. So Lucas wanted to show that this altruistic kid who, when we first meet him, is a slave that has nothing, but is still willing to give everything, how someone like that could eventually become Darth Vader of all beings in the galaxy. In other words, it was a story decision to make Anakin a slave because of the point he wanted to make with the character. Not so much any kind of commentary against the Jedi for allowing slavery, which, no, still doesn't answer the question of why the Jedi really didn't seem to be doing much about slavery or didn't make it a priority. As for why Qui-Gon personally doesn't do anything about it there and then, well, for one, as he even says, he is on a mission to get Queen Amidala to Coruscant to hopefully end the blockade and end the suffering of the people of Naboo. He can only worry about one thing at a time, basically. Now, the question then becomes, why doesn't he at least free Shmi, or Anakin's mom? Well, he did try, but Watto wasn't going for it. And if he tries to just kind of take her by force, I think the bomb thing would again be a big problem. That if he tried to take her or bully Watto into giving her up, he might just activate it, and he can't run that risk. Hell, it would almost be like the plot of The Acolyte at that point. If Qui-Gon got Anakin's mom killed and then covered it up from him, and then later on he learned that Qui-Gon had covered it up, we'd have the same situation, basically. But seriously here, and again, these maybe are not the greatest answers in the world, I will admit it, but I do think in the moment Qui-Gon is more focused on, like I said, getting the Queen to Coruscant, and when he realizes what Anakin just might be, that he might be the chosen one, it becomes, well, not exactly a side quest to free him, but it becomes part of the main quest, if you will. I think he realized that this little detour to Tatooine had a purpose beyond just a place to hide and fix the ship. We could also then ask the question of why, after the fact, why Anakin is never allowed to go back and free the slaves like he dreamed of doing. It is a big reason as to why he wanted to become a Jedi in the first place. Or why, at the very least, the Jedi, or Obi-Wan and Anakin, they didn't go back to free Shmi. And the idea here is that Anakin must let go of his mother. He must let go of his attachment to her. Which, again, no, not the best reason to allow someone to remain a slave because you want to teach their son a lesson. But that is the idea behind it. Though I think a case could be made that if you want Anakin to let go of his mother, to stop worrying about her, allowing him to go and free her, or allowing someone else to go and free her and just telling him about it, for him to be able to know she is safe, to give him that peace of mind, would be the best way to do it. It would help him let go of his mother if he knew she was just safe somewhere. Though that then teaches him kinda the wrong lesson, that he is allowed to prioritize the people he cares about, or that they should be prioritized, which again goes against the Jedi belief that we should have compassion for everyone equally. So anyway, like I said, there's no real good answer as to why the Jedi don't go and free the slaves, and I'm not going to try and manufacture one to get them out of this. I am certainly not going to say it is the will of the Force that they are slaves, and that is why the Jedi are okay with it. The will of the Force is for everyone to find their place and purpose, and I do not believe that anybody is destined to be a slave. I'll only say that Lucas simply wanted Anakin to be a slave for his story, and maybe didn't realize what it would say about the Jedi, or maybe he did want to say something in a way against them. Or about the Republic, perhaps, how because there were anti-slavery laws in place, like Padme mentioned, that was somehow good enough. Like they would be respected in Hutt space somehow. Or maybe it was simply a point about how the Jedi work within the confines of the Republic only. Not that they don't care about people outside of it or want to help them, but they're so attached to the Republic at this point that they just let things beyond it slide. Which, no, also not a good explanation. Alright, and with one hard question out of the way, let's do another one. And it kind of goes along with the what would the Jedi do question from yesterday, which I did get a few comments or questions for that topic, and we'll hopefully get some more and do a video on in the near future. But anyway, this question came to us from Cadillac DeMille, who asked, "Hey Thor, if it was the wrong thing for the Jedi to join in the fight in the Clone Wars as generals, what were they supposed to do?" And, well, even George Lucas struggled a bit with this question, saying once that as the situation develops in the Clone Wars, they are recruited into the army and they become generals. They're not generals. They don't kill people. They don't fight. They're supposed to be ambassadors. There are a lot of Jedi that think the Jedi sold out and that they should never have been in the military, but Lucas then leaves that hanging, but is then asked, "Do you think that?" And he responds, "It's a tough call. It's one of the conundrums of which there's a bunch of in my movies. You have to think it through. Are they going to stick with their moral rules and all be killed, which makes it irrelevant? Or do they help save the Republic? They have good intentions, but they have been manipulated, which was their downfall." And I think, kind of obviously, the problem with this question is, as Lucas pointed out at the end there, this wasn't just a fair war, shall we say. Not that any war is going to be fair, but it didn't naturally happen, is maybe a better way to say it. That there weren't two legitimate sides that came about and were fighting. Instead, it was just Palpatine behind the whole thing, playing both sides in an effort to make himself emperor and to destroy the Jedi. The war was completely manufactured for those purposes alone, and was basically a no-win scenario for the Jedi, and thus getting involved was a bad idea. And so, since that's not I guess you could say, a fair scenario, maybe the question should be, should the Jedi ever fight in a war? And if not, what should they do instead while one is going on? And well, considering they are ambassadors and peacemakers, that is what they are first and foremost, as Lucas has said many times. I think the obvious answer to that is they should try to stay out of it and act as negotiators, or do absolutely everything they can to seek a peaceful resolution. However, if that fails, and if the Republic is in jeopardy of losing the war or having the Republic destroyed, or if they're facing an enemy that will not or never would negotiate, and again has a very real chance of defeating and destroying the Republic, then I have to agree with what Lucas basically said about how sticking to your morals becomes almost irrelevant if you're going to be killed and everything you believe in is going to be done away with. And at this point, I could launch into a rather fun discussion about the show Andor and why I think it is some of the best Star Wars ever, because it touches on these very same things, the very same things Lucas is talking about, and what the Jedi faced in the prequels and because of the Clone Wars. But I will refrain from doing that, and instead I'll basically point out how this is the very same question you'd have to ask yourself if your homeland was invaded and an enemy was about to, literally perhaps, show up on your front doorstep to conquer or kill you and your family. Are you just going to simply give up, lay down and die perhaps because you don't believe in killing or fighting, or are you going to have to set that aside and fight? I mean, what would be the point in not fighting? What point would you make to just simply lay down and die to an enemy and have you be killed and your homeland conquered and everything you hold dear and true wiped out? And this is all rather similar to a debate I had a little while back now after the Kenobi show, and where many people said Obi-Wan letting Vader live was the Jedi thing to do, and I very much disagreed. I said Kenobi as a Jedi should absolutely kill Darth Vader, because if holding to your belief of not killing unless you absolutely have to is going to lead to the death of countless more people, if you value life, then what's the point of having a belief of not killing in the first place if it stops you from preventing that very thing, or allowing a lot more of it to happen, shall we say? So anyway, getting back on point and wrapping this up, I think most of the time Jedi should try to stay out of wars and just seek peaceful resolutions. But that then comes with the problem of, if they do that, and if the Republic starts to lose a war, and they then feel like they have to get involved in order to potentially win it, wouldn't it have just made more sense to be involved from the very start, and in theory, to win the war quicker and prevent more deaths, unless they still wouldn't win, at which point the war would potentially drag out even longer and more people would die. And at this point, I think I just need to stop and say, that is all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and answer these questions if you want, or ask a question for a future lightning response video, or for a what would the Jedi do video. And all you gotta do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.